All right. All right. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Troy City Council. This is Monday, July 17th, 2023 at 7 p.m. You are in council chambers. Before we begin the invocation, we have a Boy Scout in attendance tonight. So if you would like to please come forward, stand at the podium and give us your name, and please stay there. Oh, no.
At the microphone.
No. At the microphone. Just give us your name.
I am Piper Jackson. I am from Troop 5788, and I would like you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, we will do that after Mr. Twist gives his invocation. So everybody please stand for the invocation.
All right, if you bow your head. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you that we can come together this evening. Just ask a blessing on the council as we go through what's on the agenda. Just give us the wisdom and guidance that is needed. We thank you for all those that support the city of Troy, all those that serve our country both abroad and domestically. We ask a special blessing on those giving of their time. And we ask that in your name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Piper. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Whidden?
Here.
Mrs. Snee? Here. Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Twist?
Here.
Mr. Rozell?
Here.
Mr. Pierce?
Present.
Mr. Sievert?
Here.
Mr. Schilling?
Present.
Mrs. Marshall? Here. All members are present.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read a summary of the minutes of the July 3rd, 2023 meeting of Troy City Council?
Minutes of Council, July 3, 2023. Public hearings were held on ordinances number 037, 2023 and R40, 2023. Committee reports. Buildings and Utilities Committee recommended legislation be prepared authorizing bidding for a contract for the Police Department fluid cooler and pump replacement project. Community and Economic Development Committee recommended legislation be prepared approving the final record plan of Troy Storage Inns of America plan development. Community Partnerships Committee recommended legislation be prepared regarding the Tour de Donut event, an agreement with Can't Stop Running, an agreement with Troy Main Street, and also notwithstanding wording. Law and Ordinance Committee gave an oral report regarding 2 liquor license applications. Personnel Committee recommended Cindy Wingren's appointment to the City Beautification Committee, and that reappointment was approved. Resolution R40, 2023 tax budget was given first reading and adopted. Resolution number R41, 2023, contract for the Police Department fluid cooler and pump replacement project, first reading and adopted. Ordinance number 028, 23. The zoning of 58.093 acres was given third reading as an amended ordinance and was adopted. Ordinance number 037, 2023. Rezoning of 1511, 1551 South Market Street was given public hearing and second reading. Ordinance number 038, 2023. Record plan of Troy Storage Inns of America plan development, first reading and adopted. Ordinance number 039, 2023. An agreement with Can't Stop Running regarding Tour de Donut was given first reading and adopted. Ordinance number 040, 2023. An agreement with Troy Main Street regarding the Donut Jam event was given first reading and was adopted. Council recessed into executive session at 7:24, returned to regular session at 8:36. Following various comments, council then adjourned at 9:45 p.m.
Mrs. Knight.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Phillips to approve the minutes, seconded by Mr. Rozell. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Snee? Yes. Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
We have a number of committee reports. I will begin with the Committee of the Whole report. On July 10th, the council met as a committee of the whole for the purpose to recess into executive session to confer with council concerning disputes that are subject of pending or imminent court action. The committee of the whole recessed into executive session at 6:02 and returned to regular session at 6:35, made no comments, and adjourned. Respectfully submitted. Mrs. Marshall, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Pierce, Mr. Rozell, Mr. Schilling, Mr. Sievert, Mrs. Snee, Mr. Twist, and Mr. Whidden. Are there any comments or questions on this report? Seeing none, we'll move to the Community and Economic Development Committee with two reports from Mr. Schilling.
Thank you. This committee met on July 10th to consider authorizing professional service agreement with the consulting firm of American Structure Point Incorporated to perform comprehensive updates to the comprehensive plan and the zoning code. It is recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to enter into a professional service agreement with the firm American Structure Point Incorporated of Indianapolis, Indiana, for the comprehensive updates of the city's comprehensive plan and the zoning code at a total cost not to exceed $200,000. This was respectfully submitted by Mr. Pierce, Mrs. Snee, and myself, Jeff Schilling, as chair.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Are there any comments, questions on this report? Seeing none, please go ahead. Thank you.
This committee met again on July 10th to review the recommendation of the Troy Planning Commission that parcel D-008-105875 with an address of 1511 South Market Street and parcel D-08-251110, which has an address of 1551 South Market Street, to be rezoned from M2 Light Industrial District to B2 General Business District. This committee supports the recommendation of the Troy Planning Commission regarding this proposed rezoning and recommends that council adopt ordinance number 037-2023. And again, respectfully submitted by Mr. Pierce, Mrs. Snee, and myself, Jeff Schilling, as chair.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Are there any comments or questions on this report? We'll move on to the Finance Committee, and Mr. Siebert with one report.
Thank you, President Lutz. This committee met July 10 to discuss authorizing a waiver of a $15,000 water tap-in fee for renovation of the Mayflower Building at 9 West Main Street through a 50-year lease agreement between the City Community Improvement Corporation of Troy, Ohio, CIC, and the property owner Busted Brick Realty Group, LLC. Public restrooms will be located within the Mayflower Building. In exchange for the waiving of the water tap-in fee, there will be no charge for utility payments of electric, water, or sewer for the operation of public restrooms for the 50-year duration of the lease agreement. It is the recommendation of this the legislation be prepared authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to waive the 4-inch water meter tap-in fee for improvements at 9 West Main Street with the understanding that the City Community Improvement Corporation of Troy, Ohio, CIC, will not be charged utility payments for electric, water, or sewer for the operation of the public restrooms within the building for a period of 50 years. This committee supports emergency legislation so the work to construct the public restrooms at 9 West Main Street can commence without delay. Respectfully submitted, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Rozelle, and myself as chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Siebert. Are there questions on this report? Seeing none, we finish our reports with the Streets and Sidewalks Committee. Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, sir. This committee met July 10 regarding a professional services agreement for the conceptual design of the downtown safety and streetscape renovation project. This phase of the design will provide information for the final design, bidding, documents, and cost estimates. It is the recommendation of the committee that legislation be prepared authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to enter into a professional services agreement with LJB Inc. of Miamisburg, Ohio, at a cost not to exceed $225,000 for the conceptual design of the downtown safety and streetscape renovation project. And this is respectfully submitted by Mrs. Snee, Mr. Pierce, and myself as chair.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Are there any comments or questions on this report? Seeing none, please continue.
The committee also met on July 10 to consider authorizing submittal of an application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for funding of a roundabout at the intersection of Adams Street with Riverside Drive and Staunton Road, and to execute any necessary agreements if funds are awarded. The maximum funding for this project would be $600,000, and it is the recommendation of the committee that legislation be prepared authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to submit an application to OPWC for funding for the Adams Street, Riverside Drive, Staunton Road roundabout project, and to execute any necessary agreements if funding is received. Based on the August 7 application deadline, committee supports emergency legislation. Again, this is respectfully submitted by Mrs. Sneed, Mr. Pearson, myself as chair.
Phillips, are there any comments or questions on this report? Seeing none, we open it up for citizen comments for items on the agenda. We have 4 resolutions and 1 ordinance for discussion tonight. If you wish to address council on any of those resolutions or ordinances, you are invited to come to the podium. Give your name and address. You have 2 minutes to address council. Mr. Kerber will be our timekeeper tonight.
Bradley Barringer, Crestwood Drive. Try to be as brief as I can. In regards to R45-2023, the Ohio Public Works application for the roundabout at the park, I'd like to know if there was any traffic studies done that would justify the installation of a roundabout, and if so, could those be made public on the city website so that the citizens might see what went into the decision to place this roundabout at that location? I personally don't see a need for it, but if the city does see a need for it, I would just like to see it placed on the city website so that the citizens would be informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barringer.
Carrie Glover, 839 Governor's Road in Troy. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you today. I stand before you to express my concerns regarding the proposal to add the roundabout at Adams Street and Staunton Riverside. My concerns, this intersection is heavily used by pedestrians, including many junior high and high school students, as well as local runners and different community groups. It's important to recognize that roundabouts can create an additional hazard for pedestrians, and given the traffic volume and the presence of young and inexperienced drivers, that roundabout would likely lead to an increased avoidance behavior, such as driving through the parking lot instead of going through the roundabout. Furthermore, shutting down the intersection for an extended amount of time to put in place this roundabout would cause a lot of negativity to our area. And the use of the Adams Street, the train overpass, that not being able to get through using that, if there's a train that stops, that's our way through. That's our emergency vehicles' way through. And now they're going to have to divert and go around and probably add 7 to 10 minutes to their time to get wherever they needed to go. So in conclusion, I just urge you, the elected members of City Council, to seriously consider these concerns prior to approving the proposals for the roundabout. Both drivers and pedestrians, the significant disruptions caused by the construction, the questionable allocation of our tax dollars should all be thoroughly evaluated. And I kindly request that you prioritize the safety of our community, including the preservation of safe pedestrian crossing, especially for our junior high and high school students, as well as other pedestrians who rely on that intersection. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else with citizen comments for items on the agenda? It does lead me to a question. Mr. Titterington, do we have any reliable pedestrian data on the current roundabout at Dorset and McKeag? Do we see pedestrians there, and have they had problems navigating that in the past?
We have some pedestrians, probably not. I don't have, we don't have anything but anecdotal data for there. I am doubtful that we have the kind of volume that we might have at this intersection. I do know that back in 2017, 2018, I believe that they had, when they did the preliminary study, that there is some of that data under the current scenario. It's been that intersection, this intersection that we're talking about, has been studied several times. It's one reason why a standard stoplight configuration is never been recommended, and so there is some data there. I can say that, number one, tonight's action is just to apply for the grant. It's not to finalize any designs and even award a detailed design contract. The detailed design contract will take into consideration all of those issues and concerns and will include, the islands, shorter crosswalks, because that's the way a roundabout is designed, center refuge areas for landing, if you will. And so all of that will be considered with any detailed design work that is done.
Will the bike path need to be rerouted around the roundabout?
Highly doubtful. That would be incorporated crosswalk design when it's done. And, as it is now, it is part of the crosswalk issue or configuration, not issue. And there are, already stop bars and a stop sign that you're supposed to stop at that bike path intersection now, and that, of course, would be maintained with any redesign.
The cars have, I don't think there's a stop sign for the bicyclists there. Is there?
I believe there is.
Crossing route.
I'm through there all the time.
I mean, I think bicyclists
You're
should, but I
supposed,
don't think
well,
there's a
legally,
sign.
you're not should, legally, you're supposed to.
Yeah.
But we can double check about the stop signs, but
Okay.
either you or I may be surprised that there is or isn't one. We have more stop signs at bike path intersections,
Yes.
such as 25A. And
Harrison's got one.
From going through there so often,
Treasure Island.
I can't picture it, but I think there might be one. We can double check that.
I double check that. Any other comments or questions?
You said this was just for the approval of the grant?
The approval of the application,
Application.
submit the application of the grant.
Any other citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to resolutions. We'll ask Mrs. Knight to read the first resolution of the evening, resolution R42, 2023.
Resolution number R42, 2023. Resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to enter into a professional services agreement with American Structure Point, Inc. of Indianapolis, Indiana, for the update of the comprehensive plan and zoning code of the City of Troy, Ohio, cost not to exceed $200,000, first reading.
Motion to suspend.
Second.
It's been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Phillips, seconded by Mr. Siebert. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
The three reading rule has been suspended. It's been moved to adopt the resolution by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Phillips. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the next resolution of the evening, Resolution R43, 2023?
Resolution number R43, 2023. A resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to waive the water tap-in fee for the building at 9 West Main Street, Troy, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. This is the first reading.
Move to suspend.
Second.
It's been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Schilling, seconded by Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes. Move to adopt.
Second. The three reading rule has been suspended. It's been moved to adopt the resolution by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Whidden. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the next resolution of the evening, Resolution R-44, 2023?
Resolution number R-44, 2023. Resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to enter into a professional services agreement with LJB Inc. of Miamisburg, Ohio, for the conceptual design of the downtown safety and streetscape renovation project, cost not to exceed $225,000, first reading.
Move to suspend.
Second. It has been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Whidden. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
The three reading rule has been suspended. It's been moved to adopt the resolution by Mr. Sievert, seconded by Mr. Twist. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the last resolution of the evening, Resolution R-45, 2023?
Resolution number R-45, 2023. A resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and/or Local Transportation Improvement Programs, and to execute contracts as required and declaring an emergency. This is the first reading to submit the application to OPWC for the Adams Street, Riverside Drive, Staunton Road Roundabout Project. First reading.
suspend.
Second.
It has been moved to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Rozell, seconded by Mr. Whidden? Sure.
Pick a name, any name.
Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
I'll just Debbie's.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved to adopt the resolution by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Schilling. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the only ordinance of the evening, Ordinance O-37, 2023?
Ordinance number O-37, 2023. An ordinance changing the zoning of parcel numbers D-08-105875 and D-08-251110 in the city of Troy, Ohio, from M2 Light Industrial District to B2 General Business District. These are the parcels at 1511 and 1551 South Market Street, recommended by the Troy Planning Commission. Third reading.
Move to adopt.
Second.
It has been moved to adopt the ordinance by Mr. Phillips, seconded by Mrs. Sneed. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Moving on to communications, do we have any this evening, Mrs. Knight?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Moving on to comments of officials, Mayor Oda.
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Director of Public Service and Safety, Mr. Tennington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing as well.
Thank you, Mr. Tennington. Our Director of Law, Mr. Kerber.
Nothing, Mr. President, thank you.
We are 0 for 3. The auditor's not here. Do any council comments they'd like to make this evening? Do any staff members in the audience have any comments they'd like to make this evening? It is now time for comments from the audience. If you wish to address council on any topic, you are more than welcome to come to the podium, give your name and address, and take as much time as you wish to consume.
Friendly Mariner, Crestwood Drive, just a couple things I want to touch on tonight. First of all, I'd like to say thanks to Ms. Jackson for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. It is good to see young people getting civically involved, and as I've said many times, this is the future of our community, and I hope that sometime down the road she might be sitting up here in one of these chairs. Second, as I stated at the last council meeting, in regards to 037, and I know that's passed, that's a done deal, can't say anything against that. I stated at last meeting that I would like to see somehow a moratorium placed on the zoning for gas stations. It seems like we're getting an influx of them lately. And we passed tonight an agreement with American Structure Point for the update of the comprehensive plan and the zoning code. Now, I know we probably cannot zone them out of existence, but is there some way we can regulate the influx of gas stations coming into this community? Because we seem to have a lot of them that have popped up in the last year or two, and while it's not a bad thing, I just think we're having more than I would like to see, honestly. So I'm hoping that with this comprehensive plan update, we can at least find some way to maybe achieve a balance, if you will. Okay? And that's all I have to say about that. Now I want to talk about something that is going to affect everybody in this room. Everybody in this room, and I hope I'm not taking any thunder from my move to amend friends back here, but I want to talk about State Issue 1 for a minute. And I say this affects every one of you in this room, every one of us in this room, because it's going to surrender your voting rights to a minority. Now how is that going to happen? Well, it's very simple, and I'm going to lay out a scenario for you that I think will explain it. Let's just say we have a group of people that want to decide, we're going to serve cookies down at the Christmas downtown on the square. And we want to decide what cookies we want to serve, chocolate chip or sugar cookies. Well, let's say that there's 100 people voting. The way it stands right now in our current state constitution, 50% plus 1, simple majority plus 1, would pass an issue. State Issue 1 purports to jump that up to 60%. Now, what does that mean? Let's say that same cookie issue came up for a vote under State Issue 1. It would take 60 out of 100 to pass an issue. And that means one person swaying to the minority side, the issue would fail. Now, if you're in the majority, are you willing to surrender your majority rights to the minority? No, you wouldn't be. But this is what Issue 1 is purporting to have happen. An issue can pass 59% to 41, but it is still going to lose. And that's a problem with me. Now, I know I'm probably going to anger the St. Pat's people because they have adopted the pro-life stance, and this is to protect the ballot from abortion rights. But it's been said that this is an attempt to protect our Constitution from billionaire out-of-state special interests. Well, that has got to be the biggest blasted lie I have ever heard, because one of the backers of this issue is a gentleman by the name of Richard Julien out of Illinois, who is a billionaire political investor. So that is a lie right from the start. So my ask is this, and I'm asking this of every one of you. If you haven't voted early yet, please do. But on August the 8th, we need to turn out the numbers. And yes, they snuck it into a backdoor vote to have an August special election, when earlier this year, the state passed a law outlawing August elections because of low turnout. So what happened? This billionaire investor snuck it in the back door, got us an August election, and is asking us to strip away our voting rights, which I might add, has been enshrined in our state constitution for well over 100 years. But it's your rights that are going to be stripped away from you if you don't vote on this. So I'm encouraging you to vote no on State Issue 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barringer. Anyone else wish to address council?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Deb Hogshead. I live at 421 South Plum Street in Troy. I'm going to be repeating some things that Brad just spoke about, but some things warrant repeating, and I'm going to take it from a little, slightly different angle, not entirely different, but a little different. When our elected representatives in Columbus fail to govern in our best interest, we rely on a process called direct democracy to challenge them, using referendums to block unjust laws and citizen initiatives to propose new laws and state constitutional amendments. The August 8th special election on Issue 1 threatens our freedom and right to engage in direct democracy. Initiated by the General Assembly, Issue 1 is a proposed amendment to the Ohio Constitution that will make it harder for Ohioans to propose and pass our own constitutional amendments. If passed, Issue 1 will upend 100-plus years of constitutionally accepted procedures and standards. Citizen initiatives are already difficult to get on a statewide ballot. Petitioners must collect valid signatures from 44 counties. If they come up short, they have a 10-day grace period to make up the difference. Issue 1 requires valid signatures from all 88 counties and provides no grace period. An insufficient number of valid signatures from a single county would doom the entire effort. By targeting just one county, opponents could stop a citizen initiative in its tracks. Issue 1 abandons the principle of majority rule. It changes the passing rate for any proposed amendment from 50% plus 1 to 60%. Passing amendments, whether initiated by citizens or the General Assembly, is already difficult. Since 1913, 227 proposed amendments have made it to the ballot. Only 71 have been citizen initiatives. Of these, only 19 have passed. We shouldn't even be deciding this issue in August when voter turnout is low. As Brad mentioned, in December, the General Assembly had eliminated virtually all August special elections. Then in the spring, the legislature turned around and added another exception, this one for constitutional amendments that they propose. It's disingenuous of Issue 1 supporters to say the proposed amendment's purpose is to protect Ohio's Constitution from deep-pocketed outside special interests. The purpose of Issue 1 and an August special election is to thwart the will of Ohio citizens. Specifically, it's an attempt by the General Assembly, beholden to its own special interest groups, to prevent passage of a citizen initiative on women's reproductive rights, which is expected to be on the November ballot. Regardless of your position on abortion, remember this: Issue 1 has ramifications beyond the question of abortion. If passed, it will erode our power and authority as Ohio citizens to hold our elected representatives in Columbus accountable to us. Vote no on Issue 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Anyone else wish to address council this evening? Seeing none, this meeting's adjourned. Our next meeting will be Monday, August 7th.